If you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe and become part of this community. Oh, and also, go cop that fresh merch and listen to my new songs in the description. I did not think that I would be sitting here recording this video, or that this would still be relevant, but we're talking about Renaissance, Beyonce's latest album that dropped in July of this year, towards the end of July. I think it was the 28th, if I remember correctly. I've talked about that album so much on this channel, and then also after the album dropped, we talked so much about what acts 2 and 3 could be. But today we're going to break this down because there is new information. There is actually new details from a somewhat credible source that goes into further detail on what Act 2 and 3 could be. So today we're going to break that down, so let's jump straight into this. So as I said, Beyonce dropped Renaissance, and then right after it dropped, together with the release of it, she also confirmed that this wasn't only one album, that this was actually a 3-part act, and we only got the first act, which was the Renaissance album, in July. And so people were wondering, what could act 2 and 3 be? And I made so many videos on that. Like, we went over all the theories that were out there. You got to check out the playlist, because there were so many theories at one point or another that people were like, confused what it was actually going to be. But ever since then, it's really quieted down because she hasn't said anything about it. And if she doesn't give us any official info, we're also not going to be here like assuming a lot of stuff, because we thought that she was going to announce it a lot sooner than she now actually did, because she still hasn't announced anything. But now we're talking about it again because maybe it's getting closer than we might think. And I also want to mention that Beyonce has been in the news recently because she got nominated for 9 Grammys, now tying her husband Jay-Z. So shout outs to her, because she's been making some headlines again for basically dominating this year's Grammys, and rightfully so. I mean, Renaissance was an amazing album, but that's why maybe a lot of stuff is coming up again. But let's look at what people thought way back in the summer after the album dropped that acts 2 and 3 were going to be, before we get into the new theory or the new evidence, leaks, whatever that we got. So basically what we thought, and this was perfectly expressed in a tweet that was also, composed around this time on July 31st, so 2 days after the album's release, this one person on Twitter tweeted, the girls all think it's a 3-album ordeal, but I think Act 1 is the album, so Renaissance, that we got. Act 2 is a Netflix documentary, and I know there were rumors about a Netflix documentary coming out, so those were supported by this, about the creation process, and Act 3 is the tour. And that is what we thought for the longest time. That is also the standpoint that was supported by a lot of the videos that I dropped on this. So that's kind of what we thought. We thought that this was going to be Act 1, the album, and then acts 2 and 3 either going to be a documentary and tour, or going to be the visuals, the music videos for the album, and then the tour. So there's a couple of different variations, but it was always around the same core principle of Act 1 being the album, and then the other ones being some sort of, stepping stone for the album. So if it's going to be music videos or tour or Netflix series, whatever, but it was all kind of like building onto the original album. But now we have a sort of different viewpoint of this. So we got to look at this. So there's this guy called Kyle Buchanan. Now, Buchanan, I don't know. Like, I just had to read it because I didn't know the guy before he kind of came into the spotlight for having this theory or this news on Beyonce. And he tweeted something very interesting. We got to check his credibility after the fact, but first let's look at what he said, because this is the tweet that's been making rounds, and I know you'll want to see this. So he went on Twitter. Now, this was about 2 to 3 days ago, and he tweeted, "Before Twitter goes down, instead of making you follow me somewhere else, I'll just tell you what I've heard about the other 2 acts of Beyonce's 3-part Renaissance project." And he said, second act is an acoustic album. Third act is a collaboration with Jay-Z. And this is interesting, because this is not what we thought it was going to be. Now, first of all, I want to say that he did say Beyonce's 3-part Renaissance project. At some point, we also thought that Act 2 and 3 were not going to be called Renaissance. We thought Act 2 was going to be called Enlightenment. So again, playing on another era in human history or human culture. Now he's saying 3-part Renaissance project. We don't know if it's all going to be called Renaissance, because he is referencing 2 new albums they are likely not going to be called Renaissance. So maybe it's like a little flaw in his theory. But he said the second one is an acoustic album, maybe an acoustic version of Renaissance, but I really don't know. And the third one is a collaboration with Jay-Z. Now, obviously, Jay-Z and Beyonce already dropped their collaborative tape, Everything Is Love, back in 2018, which was actually pretty incredible. So I would love for them to collaborate again on a joint project. I think that would definitely be something that people would be interested in and that the world could really need right now. But this theory implies that there's going to be two totally different new albums coming out. So nothing building on top of the original album, not a visual album, not a Netflix series, not a tour, but two completely new albums. And this, of course, kind of changes the way we think about this, because now there's possibly two new Beyonce albums dropping within the near future. I mean, we're talking about likely not this year still, obviously not, but we're talking about next year, summer the year after, that we could be in for some new Beyonce. Now, we of course gotta, double check and like really kind of make sure that this is a reliable source, but actually, this dude, Kyle, now his last name, I'm not even trying to pronounce his name. He's a writer for the New York Times, and he has a profile on their page where we can see that he writes about pop culture and about celebrity culture and about, just people that kind of play an important role in culture, do movies like actors and musicians. So that's why he's also had this take on Beyonce, and his stuff is actually pretty credible. Now his bio reads: Kyle Buchanan is a pop culture reporter and serves as the projectionist, the awards season columnist for the New York Times, and he's also an author of a book called Blood, Sweat, and Chrome: The Wild and True Story of Mad Max Fury Road. A native of Southern California, he lives in Los Angeles. So actually, this is a pretty credible profile on his New York Times author page. So that's definitely something that we can use as backing, information security, that this is actually news that's coming from a credible source. Now, of course, Beyonce didn't announce this. This is some dude named Kyle from the New York Times, but he is writing about pop culture, so likely there is a couple of information that he has from some sources that we don't have. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to write about it in the New York Times, a very credible, news outlet out there. But he also did say in the tweet, he just said, "I'll tell you what I've heard." So that is not completely truthful sources, it's just what he's heard. But if he's in the circles and if he's in the couple of people surrounding, maybe closer to Beyonce, then there might be some truth to that. So that's kind of like the theory we have right now. Don't take this with 100% certainty. This is just as Kyle said. Now, I just thought it would be interesting kind of update y'all on what's been happening surrounding this Renaissance project, because I just didn't give y'all an update in a very long time. I mean, not a lot happened in a very long time ever since the album dropped in summer. We all thought that she was going to speak on this or do something about it earlier, but now it's kind of like in the conversation again. So that's kind of the theory. She's dropping two new albums. Second one, the Act 2, being an acoustic album, and the third one being a collaboration with Jay-Z. Now, let me know what you think about this, because it's very interesting. I want to know what y'all think about this, all of your thoughts, all of your opinions and theories, and maybe your own takes on this. Please let me know in the comments down below. If you watched this video to the end and liked it, and you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and go follow my social media, and most importantly, join my Discord in the description. Until the next one, you'll have an incredible day, and y'all take care.